Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On today's episode, it's fight week. The UFC's headed to Miami, and we're here to talk about it. Khabib Nurmagomedov is not impressed with a certain upcoming fight. And Francis Ngannou fights this weekend, but not in MMA. Damn. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. SBC creator goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's in Las Vegas. Farah Hanoun checks in from overseas. She's our international superstar reporter. And Simon Samano from the editorial side makes his comeback to SBC. He's in LA. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos. But before we get started, if you would kindly tap that like button, like right now, I'd greatly appreciate it. It's the algorithm, baby. Let's do it together. Boom, like, boom, subscribe. Let's get this show popping. All right. So we have a massive card in Miami this Saturday. It's UFC 299. Some are saying it's even better than UFC 300. I don't know about that, but it is pretty damn good. And at the top of the bill, we have the bantamweight champion, Sean O'Malley, defending his bantamweight title against Marlon Vera. Now, considering O'Malley handpicked Vera for his first title defense, and he's talked up a big game heading into UFC 299, is Saturday a must-win for O'Malley in terms of reaching that lofty Conor McGregor status that he so wants? Simon, it's been a while. Let's go to you for the first take.
How could this be anything other than a must-win for Sean O'Malley? I mean, on the simple basis that you don't get to bypass and pick the number 6 overall ranked guy in your first title defense without it needing to be a win. I mean, we've been hearing so much from Sean O'Malley about what he's going to do to Chito Vera, and he's dead set on revenge, and that's why he's getting this. The UFC is giving him the number 6 guy. It's not Merab Dvalishvili. It should be, but it's not. It's not a rematch with Aljamain Sterling. It should be, but it's not. It's not Corey Sandhagen. It should be, but it's not. It's Chito Vera, who really hasn't been all that impressive recently. And so if you're going to go ahead and pick this guy, you have to win. I mean, you have to win. If you lose a fight like this, I'm sorry, but it's back of the line. It's back of the line for Sean O'Malley. He came into this year talking about wanting to, be as big as Conor McGregor, surpass Conor McGregor. He's going to reach that status this year by fighting, I believe, 2 or 3 times, 2 title defenses, 3 title defenses. So look, this is pressure that he's put on himself. I'm sure he relishes in this moment and in this pressure, but I want to go out there. I want to see Saturday night. I want to see a performance that's worthy of all the talk and the handpicking of Chito Vera on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Fada, what do you think about this? The guy has really done some amazing stuff since coming through Contender Series. And there are times when you feel like he's on the cusp of superstardom. But what do you think? How big of a must-win is this for him to not just retain the title, but continue with those other lofty goals?
Yeah, I think it's a must-win. I mean, Sean O'Malley prides himself in being one of the biggest stars. It's something that Aljamain Sterling questioned in their title fight with the pay-per-view numbers and whatnot. This is a stacked card. That's another thing that's been thrown out there, that, they stacked the card. They put names like Dustin Poirier, MVP's debut, other great fights on there. It's going to sell anyway. Some people are calling it better than UFC 300. But the reality is, like Simon mentioned previously, there were other contenders that were worthy of a title shot more than Marlon Vera. And I think if Sean O'Malley can go out there, I understand why he wanted the fight. He wanted that revenge. He insists it's a fluke. He even had merchandise released saying he's undefeated and whatnot. He went with it. So I think he has to go out there and put on a big performance against Marlon Vera. Now, Marlon Vera is very durable. So if he goes out there and knocks him out, I think that's going to be a big statement in itself, even if people don't think that Marlon is worthy of a title fight. And I was just listening to Aljo on his podcast. He was talking about how he feels like Chito needs to make this a boring fight if he wants to succeed. He said if he gets overzealous, if he gets over-aggressive, he's going to get hit with that counter. Kind of what happened to Aljamain against Sean O'Malley. We saw kind of a tentative first round. They were getting into their groove. And then when Aljo lunged in, as you can see here, perfect timing on the shot and the clip. As you can see here, he got caught. So I think for Sean O'Malley, if he can go out there and finish Marlon Vera, I think that's going to be impressive. But if it's what Aljo says it could be, he kind of compared it potentially to Ngannou, Derek Lewis, Namajunas versus Esparza too. Ouch. But if it does end up playing like that, then I do think it will harm Sean O'Malley's star power, considering that a lot of people didn't think that that should be the fight to make. He goes out there, knocks him out like he says he will. I think all those storylines are going to be forgotten. It's going to be very impressive, and I think it'll kind of catapult him closer to where he wants to be.
Great stuff, Fada. And you know what? We have an interactive chat room that works if you're watching from Facebook or YouTube. And I'll include your comments and questions. The better the substance, the better the interaction, the more likely it is to get on the show. But right away, before I pitch it to Goes, Quay Stefan saying Sean O'Malley doesn't even have this personality to be a superstar that he wants to be. His wit is not very witty, and his replies are pretty dull too. But Goes, what do you think, man? Like, of course, it's a must win, right? To keep that title and be the guy, right? But what about those other steps he's taken towards McGregor land?
Well, I think that's the key thing, right? When we're talking about McGregor heights, yes, absolutely, it's a must win. I think what kept Conor McGregor in the game for so long was having that win over Jose Aldo and the way he did it. I think it kind of created an immunity for him for a while. Sean O'Malley doesn't really have that, right? So if he took a loss, I think it would really hurt him. But if we're talking popularity alone, a loss here, yeah, it's going to hurt, but he's still pretty popular. You know, he's kind of created that avenue outside of fighting to kind of keep his name still in the news with the podcast, calling out other fighters, calling out boxers, for crying out loud. But, you know, if you look at the loss, what it does, like now Chito Vera has your number, right? You're in no man's land. You're 0-2 against the champ. What do you do then? So I think it will definitely affect them, but I think he'll still somewhat stay relevant. I think he'll still be a popular fighter. Going back to what the guy said in the chat, like the way I always measure people's stardom is I always picture myself at the UFC Fan Expo, and if all those champions are lined up for an autograph session, Sean O'Malley's going to have one of the longer lines over a lot of those champions. He's just, I don't know, he's charismatic in a way, but I also understand your comments. Like there's times where he just kind of fumbles it a little bit. I don't think he can reach Conor McGregor status, but you know, being second, third best, that's still pretty high. And my brain's a little racked. I don't know, guys, but Farah, what you were saying about the breakdown from Aljo, I kind of disagree. I kind of think right now Chito Vera is in Sean O'Malley's head, and I think you have to capitalize on that. Right now, all he's thinking about is getting used by Chito Vera. I think from the get-go, you put your foot on the gas and you bring him back to that moment. You put pressure on him, because the longer you give Sean O'Malley to get comfortable, the stronger he gets. So my mind's a little blown on that breakdown. But yeah, as far as what we were talking about, I think a win can really hurt this guy, or a loss. Sorry.
So I like that word, immunity, get out of jail card or whatever. You don't think he has that, Simon? The loss will hurt O'Malley because he's still young and there's a bright future ahead. So how bad will it injure him?
Well, what victory does he have that's even close to a Conor McGregor knockout of Jose Aldo? I mean, I realize he finished Aljo, but I thought Fada's breakdown of that fight was pretty astute. I mean, it wasn't far off. I thought the first round went Aljo's way. So, you know, he got caught when he got over aggressive in that second round, in my opinion. I mean, I just want to backtrack to one thing here. I thought Quay's point was really solid, and I'll just frame it this way. You guys just had a segment on this show, I believe, back in December about whether or not Sean O'Malley was charismatic or if he had issues like, you know, with pressers and stuff like that. If you don't have a personality and you can't win fights in definitive fashion, then why do I care about you? I mean, what's the reason for caring about you? You know, maybe it's on some influencer level, you know, because Sean O'Malley is a internet personality, but he's a fighter. Right? He's a fighter, and we need to see him fight well, fight dominantly. And, you know, this is just one of those fights where when you handpick this guy who was number 6 in the division, you got to take care of him, and you got to take care of him easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you guys. What Conor did was pretty special. I just think Sean should have never really tried to coddle up to, you know, that possibility. When you get there, perhaps, right? But he's so far away still. I don't see it. And by the way, I think they're offering UFC 299 for $10 less. What's going on here? Is he not selling? Remember Aljo complained that his check wasn't as big as he thought it was going to be by facing O'Malley when he was the beneficiary of pay-per-view points. What's missing here? Maybe he's not as big as everyone says he is. I don't know. But if Saturday barn burner, right? Great fight. and O'Malley wins, would you fault the UFC for pivoting towards a trilogy bout and shunning all the title contenders out there like a Sandhagen or a Dvalishvili? What do you think, Fada?
Yeah, I wanted to add a point before I answer that question, because there is a notion I'm seeing in the comment section that O'Malley ducks people and whatnot. One thing O'Malley's made it clear based off of, I listen a lot to his podcasts and videos he does, he seems to always want the big fight. So for him, he's talking about wanting Ilia Topuria because we've seen the kind of the parade that Topuria's gotten since he's gone back to Spain, friggin' the kickoff for the Real Madrid game and whatnot. He wants big fights. So he was saying how now he's interested in Merab because he feels like Merab's gotten more popular. It was just talked about Omar Nurmagomedov, where he has that last name. So it's not a matter of him ducking. I think he's just looking for those big fights. He's a guy that wants to make money, and he knows he can with the right dance partner. And he sees Marlon Vera, obviously he's got a big following in Ecuador, as a big fight. Now, to answer your question, is a trilogy, I mean, I think that will be a bit crazy. Win or lose, I think it would be crazy because we've got those contenders out there, because we've got Merab, who's a clear-cut number one contender, because we've got Corey Sandhagen out there as well. I think it would be absolutely insane if, no matter how the fight turned out, God forbid we don't see some draw or something like that. But regardless, I think it would be absolutely insane if they even entertain the idea of a trilogy bout, considering that you have those clear-cut contenders. I think back to the time that Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw, when Cody lost his title and they got the immediate rematch. There was a lot of heat, I guess, with alpha male and whatnot, and I'd have to remember what the bantamweight title picture looked like back then. I can't remember at the top of my head, but right now with Merab such a clear-cut number one contender, even Corey Sandhagen out there who just recently defeated Marlon Vera, it would be absolutely wild, in my opinion, if they even thought about a trilogy.
Yeah. And by the way, the draw wasn't so bad, Fada. We benefit from it. Remember Goze's mustache and Nolan King, aka the Boston shot caller, aka Noli. They had to rock him, so we kind of got him. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
You know what, Big Mouth? I've been kind of holding back. There's an episode, and now I'm going to go through it. You and Danny had some kind of agreement on that fight. It was like mustache versus saving your head or something. Something happened there. I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to hurt one of you guys, but now I got to bring it up. I'm gonna go.
Well, it was a draw. It was a draw, so neither one of us lost.
No, the Topuria fight.
Oh, the Topuria fight.
Yeah, somebody said.
Oh, the Topuria fight.
But I remember you guys said something.
All right, I might have to send him Goes a Chipotle gift card or something, so he concentrates on that rather than digging up past episodes. Cayman Writer in the chat says, "I picked Cheeto the first time, gotta pick him again." So a lot of people already not even thinking O'Malley has a chance. Mattle Grape says, because he is a clown, that's why they give him soup cans. Well, I don't know, man. He handled Aljo. You got to give him that. Once he turned that corner, you got to give him that. He rose to the occasion at the right time. Goes, what do you think, man, real quick, with the whole trilogy thing, man? Would you fault the UFC if they did it? You know, Fada brought up some good points, but the UFC has not given Bilal Muhammad, who has a very similar streak to Merab Dvalishvili, they have not given him his shot officially just yet, and they've apparently entertained other offers for Edwards, so it's not the craziest thing ever.
Yeah, and the UFC kind of lives in crazy land, right? From time to time, they make these type of decisions, but you got to pick and choose when you're going to do this. And look at some of the fighters that you're looking dead in the eye and telling them what they have done has not been good enough, right? If you're Merab Dvalishvili, don't you kind of pull somebody aside and go, well, what am I supposed to do, right? Like, what more can I do in this situation? I think over this last couple months, maybe to a year, Merab's personality has been shining. He's getting the job done in the cage. Like, what are you saying to your fighters if you pass them over just to do a rematch like that? It makes no sense.
Yeah, Josh Wallace just came in and goes, "Wait, what trilogy?" He must have just joined the show. It would be evil. I think if there was a trilogy one way or the other after this fight, like I don't really care what the result is. It would be evil one way or the other. To me, it's back of the line for Sean O'Malley, especially if he loses. I mean, then you'd be talking about before the controversial win over Peter Yan that catapulted him from number 10 to the title shot. I mean, it was the no contest against Pedro Munoz, Julian Paiva, Chris Moutinho, all these guys that are no longer in the UFC. You see people talking about giving them soup cans. Well, that's why people are talking about giving them soup cans. Now, I don't want to go that far. We see the talent from Sean O'Malley. We just really haven't seen him beat a whole lot of people, we just haven't seen that. And that's that's what it's all about. I mean, it's all about, handling your business. And so, yeah, like I said, I'll repeat it. Like, you called for this rematch. You called for the number 6 contender when there was all these other guys ahead that should be getting this shot. So he needs to go out there and take care of business on Saturday.
Yeah, man. That's great B-roll by our producer, Cold Coffee. Good stuff there as Simon and everyone else is unpacking. That came through really, really nice. Thanks, Dad, for calling me in the middle of the show. All right, we've got to move on, though. Like I mentioned before, UFC 299 is loaded with top talent. Who else at UFC 299, though, is poised to steal a bag from someone else if things go right for them? Fada, this one goes to you first.
I'm going to go with Benoit Saint-Denis for the simple reason that I think this is a huge step up in competition for him. Now, Benoit has looked super impressive. I followed his career even prior to getting signed to the UFC, so I was aware of who he was. Of course, he had that fight with Eliasio Capoeira and didn't go his way. Showed a lot of toughness, of course, but then dropped down to lightweight where he felt like he should have been. He had competed at 165 when he was part of Brave. Obviously, that doesn't exist in the UFC, or will it exist according to Fiziev? But he's looked like an absolute killer since moving down to 155 pounds. But getting Dustin Poirier after Matt Frevola, I mean, that's no disrespect to Matt Frevola, but that's a huge step up in competition. So considering the way Benoit fights, considering and when I was there in Paris, he arguably got the loudest pop out of everybody. I mean, people absolutely love him in France. So I'm sure the UFC is well aware of the French market and how much it's growing. We've seen what Ilia Topuria and Spain, him being from there, what it's done in terms of star power. Now the UFC is talking about going to Spain. So we know that the UFC has something to work with if Benoit can beat Dustin Poirier. But the point I want to make here is Dustin Poirier, I know he's coming off of a knockout loss to Justin Gaethje. He got caught with a head kick. We didn't see that brawl ensue that we were all expecting like the first fight. I believe that it was inevitable that these guys were going to get into an absolute war if the fight did make it past round 2. Credit to Justin Gaethje for the incredible finish. But nobody has really been able to outlast Dustin Poirier when you think about it. He's had his losses to Khabib. I'm talking about a recent memory, of course. He's had his losses to Khabib and he's had his losses to Charles Oliveira on the mat. But when you talk about wars, Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker, and he uses that Dan Hooker fight as kind of an example to motivate him for this one. Justin Gaethje, the first one, Eddie Alvarez. I mean, it is hard to out-violence Dustin Poirier. It is hard to outlast Dustin Poirier. When you consider the way Benoit fights, if he's able to go do that, and he said in the countdown, this is going to be the most violent fight of 2024. We're just at the start of 2024. If he goes out there and out-violences Dustin Poirier, if he goes out there and outlasts him, I wouldn't be surprised considering the landscape at 55. Islam beat Arman already. Yes, it was his UFC debut on short notice. He recently beat Charles Oliveira. Justin Gaethje is a fresh matchup, but he's got Max Holloway. If Benoit goes out there and outlasts Dustin Poirier, if he goes out there and finishes him after an all-out war, I would not be surprised if he is the next title challenger. I think he's got all of France behind him. He's got huge star potential, especially from that market, and it would be an incredible achievement for him if he goes out there and he finishes Dustin Poirier. So I think he has a ton to gain in this fight.
Nice pull on that Sarukian matchup that he had years ago against the champ. That's right. The champ has beaten a few of these cats that are in the game, and beating Dustin would be tremendous. In fact, J1K Flow in the chat says Dustin is in trouble. Could be. Goes. What about you? You feeling this one, or you got another one for us?
I think Farah did a tremendous job. Call the countdown show. I think I got goosebumps because I'm totally looking forward to that fight. Now, some of those goosebumps are coming from George's Chipotle offer, but trust me, the way Farah broke that down, awesome. That got me pumped up. I'm going to go into a little bit of ridiculous land for a little bit because I'm going to say keep your eye on MVP. And the reason why I say ridiculous is just because Bilal Muhammad, man, he deserves the next title shot. Why we would even think about anybody else is beyond me. But MVP, I think, can kind of steal a bag, as you said, George. I think he can grow a lot here with this fight. It's a perfect matchup that's set up for him. They're giving any excuse to kind of move Bilal Muhammad to the side. So I think in regards to MVP, when you look at like his Bellator run, I've always been confused with how they promoted him over there. You know, sometimes they would talk so much about him, but then they would kind of give him lesser matchups, and then every now and then they would test him. I never really knew what exactly they wanted to do with him. And then I feel like they just ran out of time, right? With the UFC, I don't remember a time where somebody's been coming over from another organization and they've given him more play. Like they had a nice little vignette for him. They're constantly talking about how vicious and brutal he can be. In the past, like it's kind of like, hey, look, everybody, it's Michael Chandler. Hey, look, it's Ben Askren. Like you don't really get too much of a buildup when they bring someone in. This time around, they seem to really like MVP, and I think that's for a reason. If MVP gets one of those devastating knockouts that we've seen him do time and time again, I think he could be primed for a nice little position moving forward.
And they say the UFC's going to the UK at some point. UK versus UK would be tremendous. I'm thinking of Eddie Alvarez came over and had to fight Cowboy, but he came over with some publicity. Same thing. Chandler came over and takes care of Hooker. He almost got it, or I think he did get into a title fight. So sometimes it only takes one big one. All right, Simon, you're next, man. What do you think? You got a good one for us that someone might steal a bag?
Yeah, well, before I answer, pull me back, Cold Coffee, pull me back here. Why's Go's got to throw that evil out there against Bilal Muhammad, man? It's his shot, dude.
I know,
it's his shot, man.
I agree. I'm with you guys, but they're just not doing anything that's making him feel like he is even being considered here. Like, how ridiculous is that he wasn't one of those three names? Like, how silly is this? What was the word he used earlier? Evil. That's what it was. This is all evil.
Yeah. Well, and before I answer to it, go ahead. Fada's got something to say.
I was gonna say the irony of this because the names that were mentioned, what was it? Chimaev, Islam, and Shavkat, who all fast or all Muslims, all fast in Ramadan, and all have said in the past, I don't want to quote them, that maybe they're not keen on fighting in Ramadan or while fasting. Bilal's the only one that's down to do that and has done that before. So that's,
see
the one guy that's down to do it during Ramadan. Yeah,
he's a gangster, man,
dude, for sure. All right, what's your question, George?
Who do you think can maybe steal a bag? At UFC 99 because it's got so much loaded talent and so many ranked fighters, and obviously the UFC, they be tripping sometimes. They'll go in another direction if they have to.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw a little curveball at you guys, perhaps, and I'm gonna go with Song Yadong. Yadong has a big opportunity in front of him, where he's facing a former champion in Peter Yan on the pay-per-view, opening the pay-per-view, and so you get a stage like that on a huge, massive fight card like this, when in front of a packed house in Miami. I mean, I feel like it's a really big opportunity for him. You look at the fact that he was on a 3-fight winning streak before he lost to Corey Sandhagen. But that Corey Sandhagen fight was pretty close, and he was giving Corey Sandhagen some fits. And let's not forget, it was tied on 2 judges' scorecards heading into the 5th. So, if that cut doesn't prevent him from continuing in that fight, it might go a different way. His career trajectory might be a little different. So, you put him on this card against Peter Yan. The UFC is looking to establish a male Chinese star, with all the potential that market gives them, with over 1 billion people in China, but pretty good on the female side. And now it's time for someone on the male side to catch up and be that big star. Yo, I'm telling you, you go out there, you beat Peter Yan, maybe you even finish him. You give a heck of a promo afterwards in English, because Song Yadong has been really good with learning his English so he can market himself better. I mean, after this, Yadong could be huge.
He definitely could. All 3 of them are great ones, and I'll just say keep an eye on Gelton Almeida. I don't know if you can right now.
Did I say something? Did I say something? Goes is laughing. Did I say something?
I just always have a weird look on my face.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just saying, John Jones, he can be their favorite guy at times, and then all of a sudden they can butt heads. I know Aspinall's pretty healthy and ready to go, but keep an eye on Gelton Almeida. He could factor in at some point. Stipe Miocic doesn't seem to be too excited to even come back unless it's Jones. And when the UFC involves financials, that type of negotiation, they will go to their plan B's and C's. So keep an eye on that guy. He's been pretty exciting as well. But I want to know this: who's more to blame when that does happen? We'll call it belt blocking scenarios, right? The UFC for playing the hot hand and ignoring the rankings, or the fighters because they didn't cement their opportunities when given the chance? What do you think, Fada?
You know, it's tough to answer, and I'll tell you why. Because in certain circumstances, we've seen where the UFC want a champion on a particular card, and timing is a big factor in those things. Just like we were talking about earlier with Pantoja and Mokaev and Royval, like they seem to want him to fight at UFC 301, or at least Pantoja wants to fight in Brazil. Just like we had Islam Makhachev, the UFC wanting him to fight in Abu Dhabi. So sometimes when that happens, we won't necessarily get what is supposed to happen. Now, obviously, in the case of Bilal that we were talking about earlier, the guy's been down to fight. He's been down to fight whenever. So I don't know what the issue behind that is. But sometimes it doesn't timing. It's more of like an event and who they want on a specific event than it is who's actually the rightful contender. So sometimes those play a factor. But yeah, I mean, of course, when we see a guy like Bilal getting snubbed, it's tough to see. It's tough to understand. And then you got a guy like Merab who also had to fight Henry Cejudo after, but now he seems to be cemented, declared as number one contender. So is Bilal, right? We heard those words in writing, but I don't know. Sometimes it's just hard, depending on if you give the champion leeway to pick what they want, or depending on the location of the event or when a champion's ready to go. So a lot of factors.
Goes, how about you, man? The UFC will tell us we're a business, right? And if you're ready to go, we're ready to use you. But come on, they put out rankings over 10 years ago. We're supposed to follow a structure here. What you know, or is it the fighters that just maybe don't make themselves marketable to them?
I mean, when you work at a business, don't they usually lay out this is what you have to do and this is what you have to do to succeed, and you kind of have to follow that plan, right? I don't really know too many businesses where when you don't follow that plan, you don't get some sort of reward, right? I think a fighter's job is to go out there and win. Yes, we want finishes. But if you're not consistently doing that, then I think you fall back probably on big, long streaks, right? And that's what some of these guys have. So some of them even have a combination of both, and they still don't get what they deserve. That's unfair to me.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Simon? Who does it rest on, man, when the UFC does do this?
UFC. For me, it's the UFC all the way. I mean, you know, Merab Dvalishvili is on a 10-fight winning streak. I think he should have fought for the title. He didn't. Why? Because they gave Sean O'Malley what he wanted. Bilal Muhammad, we could talk about him over and over again, getting shafted on a title fight. We can go back to looking at Tony Ferguson and his winning streak. And he was marketable, and he never fought for an undisputed title. Why? Because the politics of McGregor at the time. You know, he never got to fight for an undisputed title. There was some bad luck, too, obviously. He was about to in the Khabib fight. We all know that. So, but like it just took so long, right? And some guys, you get a title shot after 3 wins. Sometimes you get a title shot after 8 wins. I don't really like that. To your point, you know, we added rankings. They're there. If they matter, great. If they don't, they don't. You hear fighters talk about how they don't matter. The fighters are hip to this, so hopefully they go in there knowing what they got to do to get their shot.
Mm-hmm. Fry YD in the chat does bring up a good point. Every once in a while, the fighters do hurt themselves, like Merab not fighting Aljo. Okay. But at least Dana's been transparent about that one. But yeah, there's been others where it's just like, what's going on here? You know, I mean, Bilal flew to Las Vegas, said it was cool. After beating Burns, he was supposed to get a shot. So I thought for sure he'd be next. And here we are. Look, we're in March and we're filling up the Rio card. And it doesn't even sound like he's going to be on that one. And don't get the chat started on the Rio card because they're feeling like that card's getting kind of screwed a little bit. But anyway, we move on. It's been a while since Khabib Nurmagomedov has spoken up about the weight class that he left behind. We found out he's not too fired up about Gaethje versus Holloway for the BMF title. Mike Bond caught up with him and he said this. Quote, I don't understand why UFC make this fight. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. It makes no sense. That's my opinion. It makes no sense why they don't give Islam a fight with Justin Gaethje. Why they make him fight versus Holloway. I don't understand what UFC have planned. But Islam ready to fight with anyone. Now, Henry Cejudo, he also chimed in on this topic in a separate interview with Mike Bond. He says, quote, I think they should probably get Max Holloway out of the fight with Justin Gaethje and give him that fight in Spain. So, guys, do they have a point? Did the UFC possibly fumble 2 title fights while scrambling to stack UFC 300? Panel, were Khabib and Cejudo's comments fair or foul? Goes.
I'm going to start off with Khabib. I think it's fair. I think he's spot on. Look, UFC 300 has been a massive headache. The Gaethje-Holloway fight, I get what it's supposed to represent, right? It's supposed to be a fun fight. These type of cards have these fights, but it's also supposed to be surrounded by fights that are structured, fights that make sense in the rankings. I think when that side of it kind of fell apart it left this fight hanging on there, and there was more meaning to this fight. And to me, like from the get-go, just having Gaethje on the same card as a guy that you should probably be fighting, that wasn't a good look. And then when you add Topuria getting that win, winning the belt, boy, does that change the trajectory of what could go on in Max Holloway's career, right? For the longest time, that's been the issue. Volkanovski kind of, he owns Max Holloway. That's why he can't fight at 145. Now there's an opening at 145. It would make sense for him to fight for the title, possibly even doing it in Spain. But I think we've kind of gone too far now at this point. And as far as what Henry said and taking a fight off the card, that's a little difficult. Like, I understand where he's coming from, and I agree. But look, a Max Holloway Justin Gaethje fight is the type of fight where if I'm a fan and I'm looking, am I going to spend my money? Am I going to fly out to Vegas? Am I going to buy a ticket? That fight might sway me. So if you sell me on that fight and then you take it away, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. So even though I think it is kind of the right thing to happen, I don't know that you can do that to the fans right now. Like that's tough. And you know what? Another thing, man, Max Holloway going out there and fighting Justin Gaethje. I know they kind of sell this as like almost like a placeholder fight, while things kind of fix themselves out. Bro, that's shark infested waters, light heavyweight. And to top it all off, or lightweight, sorry. And to top it all off, you're going to face Justin Gaethje, one of the biggest sharks. Like, you don't fight Justin Gaethje and come out the same guy. That fight is going to be very brutal for both of those fighters. I just feel like from the get-go, man, this has just been a shit show. And I don't know that you can reverse it at this point.
Goes the pushback from the UFC would probably say, hey, for a long time, you guys were saying we're putting fights together too late, right? And so now when they kind of forecasted 297, 298, 299, 300 starting late last year, they kind of went with whatever was available to them at what time at that time. So perhaps, obviously, they didn't have that vision that there would be, I guess, a fumble. What would you say to that?
Well, usually that's when you start at the top, right? You give us that big card and then you build around it. They kind of went the opposite. And I think they did that because they were confident that they could land certain individuals. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that didn't happen, right? So usually I think those things start at the top.
Joseph Boza in the chat says, what if Max beats Justin Gaethje? I could see the UFC offering Max a title shot. I know Mateus Gamron. Oh my God, I forgot about him. There are a lot of sharks there. Is there? But Gamron ain't a name like Max. Wow, that would be crazy. Fada, I mean, can you even imagine that? I guess I know I'm supposed to go to Simon first, but I went to you. But you're on my mind because you presented such a good case with BSD. What if Max beats Gaethje? This thing's a mess.
I think it harms Justin more than it harms Max, because Max, at the end of the day, this is a big, nice, fun fight. He's fought for the title a couple of times. He's a former undisputed champion. Gaethje, on the other hand, was saying before that, you know what, I put together a 2-fight winning streak. I'm going to wait for my title shot. And all of a sudden, he's fighting Max Holloway. So I think it harms him more than it harms Max. I know there's a big opportunity for Max to fight Topuria, but you've got Movsar Evloev. I know maybe that fight won't get too many people excited, but he's undefeated and he's a worthy challenger, in my opinion, after beating Arnold Allen. So it's not the worst thing in the world when it comes to 145. And you've got potentially the Volkanovski rematch. The Volkanovski is saying, I'm not gonna fight until I get my Topuria rematch. Even if they do Topuria somebody else, he's expecting to get Topuria next. He expects his fight to be Topuria. So I think in terms of 145 and Max, it's fine. Gaethje's a huge fight, and maybe it could give him big stuff at 155. I think it sucks for Justin Gaethje. I think because, like I mentioned earlier, Benoit Saint-Denis, if he goes out there and has a crazy impressive finish over Dustin Poirier, you never know what could happen. You've got Arman and Charles Oliveira, which is a great fight, which has been dubbed as a #1 contender fight. So I basically think it sucks for Justin. For Max, not really. You never know. If he loses to Justin, still a big name at 45 that everybody wants to fight. If he beats Justin, I mean, I don't know. Sky's the limit, right? 55, 45, big fight here, big fight there. So I think it sucks more for Justin than it does Max.
All right. And Simon, Khabib and Cejudo, did they have a point about the way this was put together? What they said, was it fair or foul?
I mean, while the fights were this fight between Gaethje and Holloway was made to sort of like make up for where they were at the time with 300, because for so long with 300 we were just waiting for that card to formulate and it wasn't happening. And I remember when that fight came out, we were all excited, and as some people have pointed out, everybody loved that fight before Ilya won. We still love the fight, I think. I don't really think that's really the issue. We love the fight. We love the matchup between Holloway and Gaethje, but it's what we just talked about. Like, what does that fight ultimately mean? You know, it's for the BMF title. It's for a meaningless belt. Now, if you want to tell me there are some stakes involved here where Max Holloway suddenly is thrust into the lightweight title picture, okay. I don't know if that's necessarily the case because of what else is happening at lightweight and because of the chaos that could be coming at that division. But we don't know that that's the case for sure. And so to me, to Goz's point earlier, Max Holloway, the only reason why that dude wasn't fighting for a title again was because of Alexander Volkanovski being there. It's the only guy he's lost to 3 times, mind you, but it's the only guy he's lost to in the division since 2019. So give me the 2-for-1 special if we could have had it, you know, but that was going to require some patience. And I think we were just reaching a point with 300 where the UFC had to do something. And that's what they settled on, was this fight between Gaethje and Holloway.
And I also remember, not to go against the great Khabib, but Dana did say that Mokaev had an injury. It was after a power slap or a fight night, but he squeezed it in there. And that caught me off guard. I was like, oh, okay. Well, between that, Ramadan, we might be looking at just Mokaev again in October and, you know, in Abu Dhabi. But
have we heard anything about an injury from his camp or from that side?
Just from Dana. And when he says things like that, you always wonder, negotiations aren't going right. What's not going right? Fada, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, there's Saudi in June as well. We don't know if that's a fight night or a pay-per-view. I don't know if they're going to switch that, but I wouldn't be surprised. They're going to want one of those names, depending on, or all of them, if they're ready to go, Hamzat, Islam, and whatnot. So that could be, he said summer. He said it back in January, Dana. So he said, you know, Islam will defend his belt in summer, and Islam talks about wanting to be active as well. So I don't know if he waits until October in Abu Dhabi, but we'll see.
The only other thing I can think of too to factor in all this is he has treated the BMF guys to like champ status because they do win a belt and those pay-per-view points. And if this is life-changing money for Gaethje going into a title fight by defending his own belt, but also bringing a belt to that dance, that future dance, if he wins past Holloway, it could be lucrative. Look how it swayed Volkanovski, who's chugging beers on a couch, and he takes a fight on 10 days notice. It was the money that just, you know, is a motivator. And it's kind of sad. I mean, I want the fighters to make money, but God, I feel like ever since that decision Volkanovski made, I mean, he's no longer champ. He's no longer at the top of the pound for pound. And he might not even get next. Who knows?
Yeah, but I think a lot of fighters live in the moment, right? You see all that money in front of you and you want to take it. Like, look at Jamal Hill, right? Like, wasn't that long ago that we thought he was going to take his time, and now it feels like we have that same feeling. Maybe a lot of money was thrown his way and he said, all right, I'll just do it, you know, and that can be dangerous. You know, like you said, Volkanovski might not be the same guy, and you don't want that happening to yourself just because you want to collect a paycheck now.
Fry YD says that loss to Dariush really set Gamrot back. We talked about Gamrot a second ago. Daniel Lester says Gamrot beats RDA. He does have a fight coming up against RDA. That division's really cooking. A lot of great matchups there. And Quay Stefan comes back and says, yeah, but isn't 300 the true lightweight tournament for the #1 contender still? I suppose it can be because there has been an Oliveira Sarukian promise. So if you want to call it that's a #1 contender or a title fight. But now you have Khabib kind of peeling back the curtain and saying, you know, Gaethje versus Mokaev made the most sense. He's not pulling that one out of a hat. I'm sure he must have heard stuff that Gaethje would be next. And in fact, I think that's what they told Gaethje when he beat Poirier.
Let me
a lot of broken promises by the UFC. Go ahead, Simon.
Oh, no surprise there, right? Let me throw something out to you guys just for fun here, because we're talking about whether or not if Max, you know, like Cejudo said, they should pull him and fight for a title against Ilia Topuria. Let's just say the UFC was able to get a Spain event made for, I don't know, September. I'll just throw a month out there. If you had a choice between Topuria versus Max, Topuria versus Ortega, or Topuria versus Volkanovski in a rematch, which one would you see? Would you want to see?
I'd want to see Max.
I'd see Max. And I'll tell you,
I want to see Max too. Fada, you'd want to see, who would you want to see?
Yeah, I think, and I know Ilya is going to want a big fight as well. He was dismissive of everyone, remember?
That's the biggest one. Yeah, that's the biggest one.
I agree.
Yeah, all respect to Volk, but he needs the time off. I'll see him at the end of the year. And so now is that perfect window to Max to get in there, because Max actually played ball. He knew he was 0-3 against the champ, and he really didn't make too much of a mess of it. And then when the UFC asked him to move to lightweight, he did. So I think that would be the fight. And again, credit to Ortega and what he did out in Mexico. That could not have been easy, man. After getting walloped like he did in round 1, to come back and win that fight. So featherweight can be exciting in many, many ways, but yeah, this thing with
I suppose win or lose, we can get Max versus Ilya late summer potentially, right? Even if he wins or loses this fight at 155. I mean, it would have no bearing on 145.
I would think so if it turns out like Max and Dustin, right? Fight of the year contender. UFC was a 236, I believe. Very nice back and forth fight. Max had the momentum early. Dustin outlasted him. So if it turns out like that with Justin and Max looks good, yeah, why not? It's not that crazy to me if he were to get a title fight 45. If he gets finished, I think it'll depend how the fight plays out.
Yeah. Do you guys remember Max Holloway and Ricardo Lamas with about 10 seconds left when Holloway just took his foot and did that little bull charge?
Yeah.
Put those two in that bull ring, and that's your promo right there. Have them do that little bull charge. And I'm telling you, Spain in other sports is absolutely madness. If you go see like Real Madrid, Barcelona, I can't imagine. If you saw the way Topuria walked out in that stadium in front of those fans at Real Madrid, it's going to be a huge event, and you want a really big name attached to that. And I think Max Holloway is a perfect name.
Yeah. And goes, I do want to highlight, you said something very important. It was them not building 300 from the top up. They kind of said, we'll get there. And so they kind of scrambled to throw the BMF as they were, making that sandwich. It just wasn't meaty enough. So they threw that at us. And could that have impacted these two divisions? Possibly. Great stuff, guys. And folks, we still got another 20 minutes to go on this live show. It goes down every Monday here at MMA Junkie. You can watch us through YouTube or through Facebook, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We unpack the biggest stories of the week, usually 5 of them, and then we throw in some additionals at the end. And again, you can participate in the show by leaving a question or comment. I've been hitting some of you all up here. You guys have been leaving great stuff. Do me one last favor, though. Hit the like button. Again, that's how YouTube works. And that's why you hear it a lot from people on YouTube. But that's my pledge to you guys. I think we present a quality show every week. So please do that for us. All right. Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua in boxing. It goes down this week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Joshua is the second formidable foe that the Predator has faced in the square circle, as Joshua is also a former world champion and a gold medalist too. How much pressure, though, is on Ngannou? Simon?
The pressure on Francis Ngannou heading into this weekend is really minimal. I mean, it's whatever pressure he puts on himself, which should be minimal. He's playing with house money at this point, guys. I mean, the real fight that he had was getting out of his contract with the UFC so that he could be in this opportunity and, to make the money that he wants to pursue his dreams in boxing. It's house money for him at this point. He's getting this fight with Anthony Joshua off of a loss against Tyson Fury because his performance was so good and so surprising against Tyson Fury. And a couple things broke his way at the event back in, what was the boxing event back in December, I believe it was, or November, where October? In October.
Yeah. You're are you talking about
when Deontay Wilder lost? Wilder lost. It was supposed to be Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, right? Wilder lost his fight. Joshua wins, and so Ngannou benefits from that. But I think he's still in the same situation right now, where even if Francis were to go out there and lose this fight, and let's just say he loses convincingly, maybe he doesn't get knocked out, but he doesn't look good over the course of the entire fight, and he loses a pretty one-sided unanimous decision. He still has the option to box Deontay Wilder or do something with Deontay Wilder after that. And that's still a fight that I think would be pretty intriguing and make him some good money. Now, if he loses a close fight, let's just say he loses a close fight, he still has that fight. If he wins this fight, man, we just have to appreciate the fact that we're talking about Francis Ngannou possibly fighting for a heavyweight title in boxing. It's going to depend on what happens with Fury and Usyk when they fight. But, Like, imagine Ngannou actually pulling this one off, winning this fight some way, like taking it to Joshua, who could fade if you put pressure on him. You know, he's shown it before in the past. So if Ngannou comes out with the right game plan, as we see Dewey Cooper working with him there, Dewey Cooper cooking something up real good for Ngannou in this one, man, if he somehow wins this fight and we're seeing him fight for a heavyweight title in boxing, that's going to be one of the most amazing things that I think we'll ever see in combat sports.
Simon, I don't know if you think I'm crazy, but it's along the lines of what Bo Jackson did, you know, and Deion Sanders playing major sports and doing it pretty damn well. So yeah, it would be tremendous if he could beat a former world champion in Anthony Joshua. All right, Fada, what do you think? Is there a lot of pressure on Ngannou, the Predator, going into this fight against Anthony Joshua?
I don't think so. The simple reason is that, you know, he's still got MMA. I know it might not be the biggest fights for him, in his opinion, considering he was being linked to John Jones in the UFC before leaving. We're talking about Renan Ferreira, who I believe recently said that he's just going to sit and wait for Francis Ngannou. But he's still got somewhere to go. It's not like he's in the younger part of his career, right? It's only big stuff for Francis Ngannou now. And listen, he overachieved against Tyson Fury. I know he didn't win, but he ended up being ranked, and he got the Anthony Joshua fight. Fury just came out and said, you know, he should kiss my hands and feet for making him a multimillionaire and whatnot. But the reality is just how well he did against Tyson Fury, the fact that he's now facing Anthony Joshua, he's given himself a prominent enough name in boxing where these massive names, former champions and whatnot, want to fight him, which is insane, right? So it's usually the other way around, right? So I don't think he has too much to lose. I think he's won life with everything that's happening for him. Even if he does go out there and lose to Anthony Joshua, I still feel like Simon said, there will be some opportunity for him in boxing. If not, there's MMA. There's still a lot of money to be made for Francis Ngannou. So I think he's just winning at life right now.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, is it unanimous? You agree with the panel, or do you think there's some pressure out there for the Predator?
I agree with the panel. Look, I feel like nothing in boxing, nothing that can happen to him there is going to make us not want to watch him in MMA when he returns. And that's, you know, Simon said, that's house money. Where it does maybe put a little pressure on him, where it does maybe affect him a little, is that pound for pound talk in mixed martial arts. John Jones is just always there, man. I mean, he's literally there at the last fight, walking right past him, right? Like he doesn't go away. And the longer that Francis Ngannou stays away from mixed martial arts, the more of a case we have for John Jones, right? If you don't already think John Jones is the guy right now. But see, Francis Ngannou in boxing, like, he can go out there, he can lose a decision, and he's still a winner, because MMA athletes are not supposed to hang with elite boxers. They're supposed to get mopped up. It's not supposed to happen. Okay. You can't take the fastest wide receiver in the NFL and have him run with Usain Bolt and then be neck and neck. That wouldn't make sense. Yes, I get they're both running, but it's just different. That same thing with boxing and MMA. It's just different, man. They shouldn't be able to hang the way that Francis Ngannou has been hanging. So if he can go out there, even if he loses a decision, I think he still kind of wins. Now, if he gets KO'd, I think that changes things a little bit, because then I think the people that support John Jones for pound for pound, they're going to start speaking up. It's just kind of hard to say you're the baddest man on the planet when they have a highlight of you getting knocked out, right? We don't really have that of John Jones. Not to mention, it's not like the KO just erases itself from your medical history the second you step into a different sport. It's still there. It's going to have effects on you, right? So there are a lot of challenges for Francis Ngannou here going into this fight. But I think at the end of the day, he still comes out a winner, man. And even if he maybe squeaks out that decision or whatever, just that rematch with Tyson Fury and the way Tyson Fury talks about how much that bothered him, that's always in the cards. If he gets a win, though, I don't think we see him back in MMA, guys.
You know, if I could just say, the only thing that's going to settle the pound for pound is if we ever see Francis Ngannou and John Jones fight. And that's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. So I don't really put a lot of emphasis on the pound for pound aspect of it, because I don't think it's consequential in any way. It's fun to talk about, you know, but it's pie in the sky. Like it's nothing. It's nothing. It's not really consequential to his future and to his career. It's nice to talk about, I think, but unless we see that fight, and even if he gets knocked out, that doesn't sway the fight happening one way or the other. We just need to see that fight happen if the powers that be ever want to come together to make that fight happen.
I think it means a lot to Francis because I think he just wants to be that guy. But I also feel like that pound for pound win isn't just over John Jones; it's kind of over the UFC too. And I think that's something that he kind of likes, and I think fighters secretly like it too.
Pro Fights Info in the chat says if Ngannou wins, I don't know why he'd ever return to MMA, to be honest. But whatever he decides, I'm excited about. Always fun to watch Ngannou fight. Simon, let me throw this at you. If he wins Ngannou over Joshua, are you more curious to see if he can win a major title, or do you want to still see him back in MMA?
No, I'd want to see him try to win a major title in boxing. Absolutely. I would 100% like to see him fight either a rematch with Tyson Fury or the winner of the Fury Usyk fight, if that's what it's going to be, right? They're fighting for an undisputed title coming up pretty soon, are they not? So, or that at least that's going to be remade. I mean, that's it. That would be the fight. 100 times more. I'd like to see that fight more than him fighting Renan Ferreira. All due respect to Renan Ferreira, and I think that'd be intriguing, and just given Ferreira's massive size and the way he closed out last year and the way he opened up this year with demolishing Ryan Bader. Sure, like it's an exciting fight, and I think it would be awesome, but it's not as compelling or as intriguing as Francis Ngannou beating the UFC to get to this point and then fighting for a heavyweight title in boxing for all the money and all the respect. Like, that's it. That's what would get me.
Especially because he didn't leave MMA off a loss. So
yeah, I mean, he
maintains a little bit of that swag.
Yeah, he's the lineal champ. He's the lineal champ in MMA.
Joey in the chat room says if Ngannou wins, goodbye MMA. It could be, man, because there would be some big fights that await him. All right, I want to get to topic 5. I can tell Fada and Ghost kind of feel the same way about Ngannou staying with boxing if he wins. So we'll know more this weekend. But Mohamed Mokaev and Umar Nurmagomedov, they won their fights on Saturday, but did they impress enough to warrant a title shot? Fada, let's go to you for that one.
Not really. And listen, I love Mokaev. I've been following, again, another one of those guys. I've been following his career before the UFC, doing interviews with him. This guy has always had ambitions of being champion. He's had struggles to land opponents, even as an amateur. It's been the story of his life, literally from day one. Mokaev has just struggled, especially when he became pro. It became that much worse for him trying to get guys to fight him. The guy's always willing to fight, and I respect him a lot for that. He's down to fight anybody. Even the fact that he tweeted out at Royval and they're back and forth, like, I'll fight you in a number 1 contender fight. I respect that. And the fact that I think he's going to miss the mark by a month, the youngest champ goal, if he does challenge Pantoja at UFC 301. So I think because regardless, he's not going to make that, trying to be the youngest champion in UFC history. I don't know. It wasn't the performance that would scream title shot. It is a 2-man race between him and Royval. I think it's going to come down to what Pantoja wants. I think Pantoja is in a position where he can pick, does he want a fresh matchup in Mokaev, or is he motivated enough to fight Royval for a 3rd time? I think if you're Pantoja, you'll probably pick Mokaev, even if people don't think he necessarily deserves it. That's just the landscape at 125. Someone mentioned Steve Ercik earlier in the comment section. Of course, he knocked out Matt Schnell. I do believe maybe one more fight for Ercik. That's 2 ranked wins, I think, for Mokaev. That's Tim Elliott and now Alex Perez. So I think that comes down to Pantoja and his choice. So I wouldn't be like crazy mad if it ended up being Mokaev versus Pantoja, even though I do feel like I expected a better performance from Mokaev's standpoint. Now, in terms of Umar Nurmagomedov, I don't think he's next in line for a title shot. He called for a rebooking of the Corey Sandhagen fight, and that's another guy who struggles to get ranked opponents, right? So I can't fault these guys. Listen, they want to fight. He got clipped early, ended up dominating the fight on the ground. So it's a dominant win. At the end of the day, can't fault the guy. He wanted to finish, didn't get it. Was it super impressive? No. But he's willing to fight. I can never fault these guys who are constantly down to fight anybody at any time. So he wants the Corey Sandhagen fight rebooked. Why is he going down that angle? Because that's the only guy who actually accepted to fight him from the rankings. It just fell apart. And Sandhagen said, I'm willing to have it rebooked if he looks impressive. So that's the interesting part. Let's hopefully we hear from Sandhagen soon and see if he defines that as impressive. But again, wouldn't be mad if neither got a title shot. Especially the landscape at 35 with Merab and Sandhagen. Umar didn't even call for it. In terms of Mokaev, it's not crazy. Look at the landscape of 125. I think comes down to what Pantoja wants.
Good stuff, Adam. Before I hand it to Goes, you did put Mokaev on our radar years ago. Great stuff. You and Nolan King do a great job of uncovering a lot of the young talent spread out throughout the world. In fact, I want to give you a quick shout out from Jason Pian. He says, shout out to Fada, who was telling us about Ilya years ago. Goes. All right, how about you, man? Did they do enough to warrant a title shot? Nurmi did get clipped, but then he just buzzsawed him. I mean, the scores were pretty dominant, and both are undefeated. I think they're a combined 28 and 29 and nothing. Those shiny O's on the loss column, those are tempting to market for the UFC. But what do you think?
Well, I guess I'll start with Mokaev. I mean, I feel like flyweight just really isn't in the position to be making these choices. You look at guys like Albazi, he's recovering from injury. For me, Royval, he's had his shot, right? You got guys like Manal Kopp, he's had weight issues. Like, I don't think we have much of a choice here. You have an undefeated fighter. That O means so much, man. I think you got to promote it. I think, Mokaev wasn't 100%, but he still got the job done. It wasn't probably his greatest performance, but if you're going to give him the shot, I think you give it to him based off of his body of work and not so much this last fight. Who is he, right? He's a guy that is good on the mic. He's a guy that's good in the cage. He probably relied a little bit too much on shooting, and sometimes it didn't go his way, but he's working on it, right? You see him in Thailand working on his striking. It's getting there, right? But I just don't feel like we have too many choices here. Like, give him the shot. Let Royval had to take the last shot on short notice, right? Give him some time to heal up. Give him some time to get better, because he did show that he has improved, and let him come afterwards. But I think right now, for me, Mokaev is the guy there. Nurmi, I would argue to say that he probably showed us more in a decision than he would have if he would have gotten like an early stoppage or something like that. I think that's what you want to see out of fighters. Like, how do they respond to adversity? In this particular fight, he got rocked, man, and he came back and he put a beating on his opponent. So I think I could argue we probably saw more out of him in that performance, but I just don't think he's ready just yet. I think one, maybe two more. I like the Sandhagen fight. Like Farah said, he's the only dude that'll fight anyone in this division. This division's crazy.
Simon, what are your thoughts here, man? Did any of them warrant a title shot?
We throw it to Farah Hanoun first because she had her hand up.
Yeah, I want to add something real quick, because yes, Albazi, I did not mean to like snub him. I believe he's injured. I think I'd like to know where he's at recovery wise. Him and Mokaev have some heat though. So if Mokaev doesn't get the title shot and Albazi's not ready, apparently there's Manchester in July. That would be perfect. So you're welcome, UFC.
I was going to bring up Albazi because I wasn't sure how he factored into this equation, but Farah just answered how he factors in. But answering the question that you asked, George, no, neither guy should get a title shot off of this. Now, I'll address Nurmagomedov first. He showed more in this fight by the fact that he was clipped early, and he rebounded from that in such a dominant fashion to still score a clean sweep on the cards. So, but still, it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. He's number 13. I'm not going to feel good about a guy jumping from number 13 to a title shot. It's the Sandhagen fight. Now you go over to Mokaev, who's at number 8. I'm not really going to feel good about a guy ranked number 8 jumping up to a title shot. But here's the thing, though. Where Pantoja is in the position to really call the shots. He's no Sean O'Malley. He's no Conor McGregor where he gets to handpick his opponent, right? But the pay-per-view coming up at the UFC 301 is in Rio. They want a Brazilian champion headlining that card. They took Alex Pereira out of it. He's headlining 300. They took him out of there. So now really it's just left with Pantoja to call the shots. If I was Pantoja and I could call the shots, I would want the trilogy with Brandon Royval. I mean, you've got wins over him. You just beat him. He's just coming off of 5 rounds. Hell, that's the time to take him, right? Might as well do it, because I mean that's the time that you can beat him a third time. And still, if I'm the UFC, I think I would want him to go that way, because you can still then have a fresh matchup down the line. I'm not saying the UFC 301 is going to be a throwaway pay-per-view, but I mean, it's in Rio. It's going to be stacked with, local Brazilian fighters, regardless of where they're ranking. That's just the way it goes with some of these events that are international, right? They want to get a lot of local Brazilian fighters on there. So Pantoja versus Royval 3, yeah, it can headline that event. And I think that's just fine. And that's the fight that I would want if I was Pantoja.
Nurmi is in a stacked division. I say no, but I think Mokaev might get a shot because his division isn't as stacked and the options are kind of limited. So he may actually back into one, but he's undefeated and he speaks English, and I think he can sell the fight. We'll see. We're almost out of time here. Cold Coffee will not like this, but just one quick overtime question, guys. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Are you guys feeling Cejudo versus Moreno at the Sphere? It's UFC 306, right? So this is kind of like a playoff of last year's UFC Noche, but it's an actual numbered event. Cejudo wants it at 131 pounds. There's a little history there, a little beef there. You guys in or out on that one?
Cejudo versus Dan Marino? I thought I heard Marino.
Brandon Moreno.
Moreno, not Marino.
Moreno. Are you guys in? Yeah, feeling it?
We're in. Yeah, we're in. I mean, it's like it's a fun fight between two names, but it has no, they got some beef. They got some heat from the Ultimate Fighter. Sure.
And Moreno's
I don't mind it.
Picture, so now's the time.
I don't mind it.
Yeah. What were you saying, Goose?
It has no value. I'm in as a fan. I'm excited. It's gonna be a good fight, but it really does nothing for either guy, I think, other than squashing beef, right?
Yeah,
but they're
you got a Mexican against a Mexican American, so that's a good way to start building a card around those two. Go ahead, Fada.
Yeah, they're both in limbo. Like, what do you do with Cejudo bantamweight, and then what do you do with Brandon Moreno after that loss, especially with all those guys we were talking about at flyweight, Albazi and Mokaev and Royval and
it makes sense.
If he can get his weight issues. Yeah, it's a perfect way to like fight and then see how the divisions play out, and then they'll have a better, clearer picture of what's next for them in their respective divisions.
You would at least be able to market that one of them is back in some sort of picture, as opposed to they fight separate fights, say they both lose. Well, now you lose two guys. So
that's true. Folks, you can count on us every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, for the Spinning Back Clique show. It is live, and we have a rotation of our panel, the reporters, the video guys, the radio guys, the editors. We all mix it up every Monday for an hour. So tell a friend, retweet, share, all that, so we can blow the show up. On the way out, hit the like button too. It would really, really help us out. I also want to give some love to Boxing Junkie. Michael Rosenthal had a great article unpacking Ngannou versus Joshua. Check it out. He brings up good points on how Tyson Fury maybe kind of took him lightly, and that's why Ngannou looked good. But then he gives Ngannou his praise and some love, because that really was amazing what he did out there in his debut fight against arguably one of the greatest heavyweights ever. So check it out, boxingjunkie.com. And of course, Goes and I, along with Fada, we'll see you all on Saturday. She'll be hosting a preview show on Saturday, along with one of our colleagues. Unnamed yet, Fada, or do you have a name for us?
Unnamed, but
unnamed.
TBD.
All right. Well, one of the reporters will step up for an hour. She'll be on at 5 Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And if none of them step up, I'll fly with you, Maverick, or whatever that line is from the first Top Gun. All right, there you go. And Goes and I will be there for the prelims at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, for those 4 free fights. And then once we get to the pay-per-view, you got a decision to make. But if you don't get the pay-per-view, Goes and I will be your eyes and ears, and we'll tell you what's happening in real time. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And we'll unpack all that happens with UFC 299 on next week's Spinning Back Clique. Go out and be a champion. We'll talk to you soon.